Apart from the types that we had discussed in succession, that were primary and secondary succession, now we are going to see the broad categories of biotic succession. One is that succession comes and overtakes for an well developed ecosystem on a bare rock, and the other one is inside a water body. Supposedly it's a lake or a pond. So we have biotic succession of two types. First one is hydrarch succession, that is in a water body and we are reaching the mesic conditions. We had discussed about it. And the second one is the xerarch succession. Hydrarch is called hydrosere and xerarch is called xerosere. We are going to see pictorially what happens when hydrarch takes place, hydrosere takes place, and understand in the similar way it would be on a bare rock. We are going to analyze the various stages one by one. Now the first stage, what you see over here is, this must be a water body, but what you see that there are angiosperms. This is the climax community that we have to reach. Now it begins with a water body that starts growing within it such plant growth, that is phytoplanktons. The first stage when the water body enters into the series of successive steps so that succession takes place over there is that of phytoplanktons, okay, free floating autotrophs that are found covering the lake surface. Phytoplanktons would come. These phytoplanktons would lead way by adding biomass to the water, fresh water, to the growth of submerged hydrophytes. What type of submerged hydrophytes could possibly grow inside that water body is the example of hydrilla. We have Vallisneria, we have Utricularia, Keratophyllum and Chara. Some of them are algae while some are plants, okay, and you see these submerged hydrophytes is the second stage. So the first stage was phytoplanktons, the second stage is of submerged hydrophytes, followed by the stage of free floating hydrophytes. Now what will happen is that submerged hydrophytes would pave the way for free floating hydrophytes, like you have the example of lotus. Right, when you see a pond that is having many lotus which are floating over it, that means it has reached the third stage of succession, that is free floating hydrophytes. We have the example of lemna, we have the example of salvinia, azola, wolffia, pistia. These are small free floating hydrophytes which come into the pond and hence increase the biomass further. You see how step by step we are increasing the community. Okay, the biotic community is increasing in the number of species it is having, followed by reed swamp stage. If ever it has happened that you have visited some lake, natural lake, or a water body or a river where the check dam is made, what you find is where the stagnant water is there, such reed swamps are growing. Okay, now this reed swamps, these are the reeds basically. In many places you see people playing with these parts, these are reeds, and this is the next stage that follows the free floating hydrophytes whenever succession is taking place. Now the reed swamps would grow for certain time in the given water body, and they would pave the way for growth of sedge meadows. Okay, after that, as you can see, the water is becoming shallower and shallower. You are having free floating hydrophytes over here. Of course submerged would be there. There are reeds in the back, and it has led to the growth of sedge meadows which are adding to the soil content of the water body. The water is getting shallower, and this is what sedge meadow looks like. Just ignore this part, pay attention towards this part, because this is the climax community. I could have used the images where it would have been depicted using an animation, but it's better you get an idea how actually succession is taking place while you are doing your work of studying over here. Somewhere in some water body succession is taking place, as is seen in this water body. Sedge meadows will be followed by marsh meadow and shrub stage. Okay, now outwards to this, when this sedge meadow takes a long period to grow, adds to the soil content, depletes the water body of its excess water, this is the next stage that comes in the hydrarch succession. This stage paves the way for the climax community, which is in full equilibrium with whatever biotic communities are present with nature. Okay, all the biotic communities present at this stage, whether it is angiosperms, whether it is gymnosperms, they are in full equilibrium with whatever abiotic conditions are being provided by that particular place. So you see, we started with a water body that was having only phytoplankton, and we have reached a stage where water is almost gone. Okay, so this is the climax community, and with this we come to the end of hydrosere. Now once we have seen hydrosere, we are going to see what happens in xerosere. Xerosere has bare rock on which the succession has to take place. Okay, now on the bare rock you are not going to find water, so phytoplanktons will not be in this scenario. What would be in the scenario? The first species to come and inhabit the bare rock would be those of lichens. These lichens would be followed by mosses. These mosses would be followed by annual herbs. The annual herbs will add to the biomass, add to the nutrition of the rock, and give way to perennial herbs. So on a bare rock also you are going to find increase in the number of species, increase in the number of biomass, increase in the number of complexity, and the ecosystem is getting evolved. Perennial herbs will follow the stage where we have shrubs and small trees, and lastly you are going to find the angiosperms or the big trees or the woodlands. So these are the stages of xerosere which are taking place. This is the pioneer community, this is the climax community. So this is all you have to remember. Now now that you have seen how succession takes place within a water body, you can very well imagine how it would be taking place on a bare rock. If you go out somewhere, if you have to practically analyze it, I would suggest you to go to some bare place. Over there you will see that succession is working without anybody paying attention. All these species where you find one leading way for the growth of another or the introduction into the ecosystem of another species, and finally a climax community with full equilibrium condition with the abiotic factors is prevalent. Okay. So this is all about the biotic community, understanding both xerarch and hydrarch succession from the pictorial presentation of hydrosere.